at 10, Ruin. We know that the main title of the DLC is going to be Ruin. Now, whether this will be referencing my opinion of the series or the actual state of the Pizzaplex is unknown, but based on the poster, it's possibly both, because the Pizzaplex looks absolutely destroyed. The Freddy statue from the lobby is in pieces, and there is plenty of rubble all over the ground, and you can see the walls next to the escalators are actually pretty banged up. It's not clear if this is exactly how the lobby will look, since this is just an illustration, not a screenshot from the game, but it is still possible. They could design the damage around this poster, or they could have taken a screenshot and then had someone illustrate it instead, which is entirely possible. But given that this is going to be released in 2023, I doubt that they have stuff made properly for it. They may still be working out the storyline at this stage. In at 9, Free. The name of the DLC may be Ruin, but I'm damn glad it won't ruin my wallet. Especially when the main game was oddly enough in ruins and still cost me $50. And this was before I started buying cheap frozen meals to feed myself, so I was pretty broke. But honestly, I'm pretty glad that this DLC is free, especially with the amount of mods that are probably going to come from it. And it's also probably an attempted apology from Steel Wool since, like I said, the original game was so busted and unfinished when it originally came out. Did you know that despite being incomplete, the original game uncompressed was 86 gigabytes? That's a bigger game size than Skyrim, for God's sakes. That's around the game size, or like a file size, or maybe even a little more than Grand Theft Auto 5. That's absolutely insane. And now it's around 62 uncompressed, which is nicer, and it's 41 compressed. But still, goddamn, that's a lot for not that big of a game when you really think about it. In at 8, 2023. Yes, as I said earlier, the DLC will not be releasing until 2023, which is unfortunate, but it could actually be a good thing. Firstly, it gives me at least another 8 months of DLC themed content before it actually releases, if it is released in January and then the hype dies down for it. But it could also mean that the DLC will be even bigger and better than any previous one, like adding just a couple of more nightmare animatronics or a couple of more levels. However, this also raises the question of, is this the case, or are they just taking their sweet time because all of this is a free DLC? Like, can we really expect to play something huge for free? I doubt it. Like, the only reason it might be free though is because it's affiliated with Scott. But after Scott stepping down, I don't really know how Steel Wool would handle this kind of thing if they were doing it on their own, so I can't really say for sure. And at 7, Vanny Cam. We can also see 6 monitors on the poster which have multiple images of security cameras and Gregory on them. Across the 6 monitors, there are 4 total images that appear, with the bottom 2 being the odd ones out, and the 4 above that being 2 different images. One of Gregory looking surprised, and another of Vanny looking at the security camera that's glitching out. Very reminiscent of the iconic Bigfoot image that's very blurry, where he's walking like this. And I think that this is actually one of Scott's clever tricks, like how he used the keypad and sister location to tell us that Crying Child and Fnaf 4 take place in 1983. I think that Scott or Steel Wool is doing the same thing with this poster. By glitching Vanny out on screen, they're showing us that either A, Vanny was the entity that Gregory was talking to that was mentioned in the therapy tapes, or B, that Gregory having his vision glitch out when she is nearby is due to Gregory being a robot. It could be either, but it could also be both, considering how these are both next to pictures of Gregory looking surprised, and they're on both sides of the screen. 2 pictures, 2 eyes. This is the real 2-eye theory. And at 6, brightness. As always, the first thing you do when you see any FNAF promo art or any image that's related to FNAF at all, you go and brighten it to find more details or maybe even some secrets. And the first thing that I noticed is that there aren't any question marks on this poster. Thank God. But there's also quite a few things that got revealed to me. Firstly, at the top there are actually 2 windows on the poster instead of the one that just seems to show up in the original. These windows also look like they are angry eyes, which could indicate an overarching villain. There are also a very faint set of eyes in the top right corner as well, aside not including the ones on the left that are clearly visible, but the ones on the right could just be an anomaly since they are very faint. And I also see that the girl in the middle doesn't have any color on her aside from her shoes. More on that later. And the floor also cuts off at the bottom, but the rocks on top of them don't. Mostly because at this point the ground has pretty much faded into black, but the rocks would still kind of be visible. But seriously, this girl is in black and white. Halfway through, and at number 5, collapse. One of the big questions we, or at the very least I, had after Security Breach was what part of the Pizzaplex collapsed after the cave-in during the true ending. And it was really up in the air whether it was the entire Pizzaplex or just Roxy's Raceway. I guess they kinda left it that way depending on what they wanted to do. But this poster and the title confirms that the Pizzaplex Pizzaplex itself is in ruins. The whole place is a ruin. The giant Freddy statue from the lobby is destroyed and there's rubble everywhere. There are still some questions, of course, like it is just an illustration after all. How's the rest of the Pizzaplex doing, for instance? What happened to the other animatronics? What's the main goal of this DLC? But while the latter may have been answered thanks to another detail from the poster, I don't think we'll have any answers for a while. The DLC doesn't come out until next year, which is absolutely insane, but at least it's free. And at 4 eyes. And while Gregory's eyes may be robotic, there's another set that I would like to point out in this Security Breach Ruins poster. The red eyes in the top left corner of the screen. Now, this is very clearly Vanny, but since I've seen a few people get confused by this, let me explain why. The eyes are red, which we only really see Vanny have, since Burntrap's eyes glow purple and the animatronic eyes don't really glow. We also know that Vanny might have been able to survive the collapse due to her being controlled by Afton, but also because she was able to be on the roof before us when the fire starts in the rooftop ending. I mean, she gets pushed off the roof by Freddy, but we know that she was up there before us somehow, so I'm sure that she would have found a way around a collapse. Plus, if she's on the security cameras and the other showcased person is Gregory, who we know is alive, it just makes sense for Vanny to be alive. Plus again, red eyes. And they're in a similar position to where Vanny was placed in her first poster appearance as the Shadow. You know, like the one where Freddy's rocking out and then there's like a bunny chick with a knife that we were like, who's that? Yeah, it's in roughly the same area. It's not in the same place exactly, but it's in the same vicinity. Getting close to the end of number 3, Busted Chica. Now, when I make jokes about rearranging Chica's guts, this is not what I meant. Yes, that's right, my main girl Chica also makes an appearance on this poster as probably the most resilient animatronic in the group, because she's still kicking, despite being crushed by a trash compactor and then a building, and still having most of her smoking hot bod. Some of it was removed and cracked, but her face also has seemingly melted due to possibly the fire we were using to kill Burntrap, or maybe just because a fire started in the kitchen when the building collapsed. She's also lost the lower half of her left arm, her left, not your left, remember that, don't make my mistake, and she's also lost her right leg warmer. The casing for her midriff and her right arm is gone, but other than that, she's fairly intact, at least compared to Monty. Also, interestingly enough, only Chica's white face melted, meaning that it looks like someone, spilt frosting all over her face. I guess that takes the term busted to a whole new level. But ultimately, in at number 2, Help Me. Very reminiscent of the Save Them minigame from the earlier FNAF games. I'm pretty sure it's FNAF 2. You can see Gregory's face on the bottom left monitor with the phrase "Help Me" underscore written in green lettering. This seems to me to indicate that we may have a potential plot idea brewing where we need to save Gregory and Freddy after the collapse of the Pizzaplex, but we know that Gregory and Freddy sit on the hill in the final shot alone in the true ending, meaning that if we do end up having to save him, our player character will most likely die in the process. This also means that we will not be playing as Gregory, but more on that in a moment. The underscore here could also be another indication of Gregory being a robot, but it could also potentially just be a reference to a file within the main game or within the DLC that could contain some secret information. But I have no idea if that's true. That's just speculation for the time being. I'm gonna have to look in through the actual Security Breach game files before the game comes out to see if there was an update that added one of those files, since underscores are primarily used for putting spaces in file names without actually needing spaces. Or it just could be that we need help in this case. Finally, in at number 1, Blondie. We do also see a new character on this poster, one we have never seen before. The little blonde girl holding the flashlight that is illuminating this entire scene. She's short, blonde, and wearing light-up Skechers like the girl boss she is. But she is also presumably our player character, given that she is front and center. Now, as to whether we are looking for Gregory or if Gregory is looking for us is one thing, but I have a slightly wild idea that could help explain. The pigtails is very reminiscent of Baby, but this girl has blonde hair. And while we may not be able to see her face, I think that she may also have green eyes, because anyone with blonde hair makes me instantly think of Elizabeth Afton, who gets grabbed by Baby in 1983 and goes on to possess the animatronic. Now, given that we've made the comparisons of Gregory to Crying Child in the past, and the very familiar nature of this blonde girl, I think I have a reason why all these children have gone missing. Because they look like the original Afton children. Think about it. This girl looks a lot like the middle silhouette from the original Missing Children's article in the worst ending for Security Breach. And the rest of these children look similar to each other, at least using their silhouettes, because that's all we really have. Plus, Look at her light up Skechers, okay? Red and purple lights. I'm sorry, but when have we seen purple and it hasn't been an indication of Afton? Plus, the red is exactly like Vanny's eyes. This has to be one of the 9 missing children, right? That got released thanks to the collapse of the Pizzaplex. Like, come on. That has to be it. And at 10, non-canon. A lot of people were suggesting a simple fix that would have all of this make sense, and it would be just to make the DLC non-canon. And honestly, I don't think that that's even possible. Even if expressly stated that it was non-canon, after the last DLC claimed that it was nothing more than a festive holiday-themed add-on with no hidden intent or purpose, and then giving us a whole load of hints towards the next game, none of us would trust Steelwool or Scott when they said that. No matter what, okay, we would still consider the DLC probably canon. And maybe that's something that we could actually deal with, since after all there is only one true ending to the game, assuming this doesn't take place before or after the story and we still play as Gregory in the game. So maybe this would actually still be possible, but any endings we end up getting wouldn't be the true ending still, and maybe the true ending would be impossible to get without Freddy. I mean, we could just play through the game until 6 AM and then be forced to leave and not have the option to stay. And at 9, new kid. The DLC could easily be explained away by making us play as a new kid who ends up getting stuck in the Pizzaplex for another reason, which would also explain why we aren't being protected by Freddy, who at this point would have run away with Gregory. They could have rebuilt Roxy's Raceway or maybe just have it off limits, and we could play through again using another character as our guardian, at least if they wanted to keep it canon. It would also show us that what Gregory fell into was intended on being a trap, hence maybe why Vanessa was sus of Freddy, but then after he gets out of parts and service, she doesn't dismantle him again, since that would make Gregory trust him. This could have been how all the children went missing, and this would have shown us that, but Gregory was the first one to make it out alive. This idea came from YouTube user Dank Meme in the comments of the Choose Your Guardian video, and that's where most of these ideas actually do come from, but if they're suggested by multiple people, I can't really show all of the comments, but from what I saw, Dank was the only one who suggested a new kid in a rebuilt pizzeria. And at 8, Sun and Moon. Multiple people were also saying that if this was a thing, they would want the sun or moon animatronic to protect them, which is just a whole new level of trauma. Like, that thing needs like a talking to by Chris Hansen or something, cause it's a creepy, like the fact that he will actively pick this 4-year-old sized kid out of a ball pit and then keep dragging you back to the same spot so you can't leave him is just a whole new level of crazy. Like, I get that he's an animatronic and he's not really capable of being a pedal bear, but like, come on. You have to admit, this guy has some creeper vibes, and I'm not talking creeper aw man vibes, I mean like prison predator vibes. Like, why would you want this thing to protect you? I guess we have to protect our investments, but like in this context, that's absolutely terrifying. Plus, Sun and Moon doesn't really have a reason to leave the daycare, and when they're in their moon form, they just want to put you back to bed. Okay, damn, I didn't actually realize how really creepy this thing was. I mean, like, his first words are naughty, naughty boy. So it should have been a dead giveaway. And at 7, Bonnie Bowl Battle. I mentioned last time how Freddy doesn't really have a section for a boss fight, since most of the Pizzaplex is named after other characters. Roxy's Raceway, Chica's Mazercise, Monty Golf, etc. But a few commenters had the idea that maybe Freddy could have his boss battle inside of Bonnie Bowl. I'm guessing because he was mourning the loss of Bonnie. I mean, it would kind of make sense, but the bowling alley doesn't really have much of a boss arena vibe. It doesn't really have the ability to house a boss battle, seemingly. Like with Monty, the boss battle made sense, at least in Fnaf's way of making sense, but Freddy in a bowling alley? How are we gonna stop him like that? Get him to step on a bowling ball and fall backwards? I mean, it took Monty falling off a catwalk and getting smacked in the face by by a giant bucket for him to actually get destroyed. So how would a bowling alley with no net full of hanging bowling balls actually be able to help us beat him? I don't know. It's a nice idea, and I like the thought process as like an homage to Bonnie, but I unfortunately don't think it would work. And at 6, Disguised. YouTube user Canis Rufus Lupus I like that name. YouTube user Canis Rufus Lupus suggested in the comments that instead of hiding inside the animatronics or riding on their shoulders, that instead Roxy and Chica could throw disguises over us in an effort to conceal our identity. As they put it, quote, "My suggestion was that Gregory would follow closely behind Chica or Roxy in disguise when you're controlling them. Chica would toss a cupcake blanket over the boy's head with eye holes, while Roxy would stuff the boy into a giant foam finger that says you're number one. The security robots would be blind to him. him, which I think it's actually a really interesting idea, and that would certainly make for some hilarious moments. Like, imagine Roxy lifting up the cupcake blanket randomly while you're just like chilling with Chica, and then boom, you're done for. But also, this would kind of defeat the whole like power mechanic that they added to kind of nerf the whole glam rock mech thing in the first place. So I unfortunately don't think that they would go with this seemingly absolutely amazingly hilarious idea. But good thinking, Candace. I'm proud of you. That's outside the box. I like it. Halfway through in at number 5, Guardian Vanessa. The idea that Vanessa could be your guardian is interesting, but considering how she is also the main antagonist, you'd be left alone for various parts of the game, which I mean is already the case with Freddy since he can't enter places like the West Arcade, but since, thanks to the CDs at the end of the game, we know that Vanessa knows there's something going on with her and that she knows Glitchtrap is watching, I don't really think that she'd try and help us in any scenario. Like, hell, if she was really trying to do her job, she would have opened the gate at the beginning of the game and then went on the intercom to tell us to get the f out. Plus, she locks us in the lost and found room, or security room, or whatever it is, knowing full well that her other half could take over at any moment and come after us. And look what it does. It takes over her and comes after us. She also says that she called the cops, but she clearly didn't. So I don't think Vanessa would be down to help us, unless she was doing it to try to be selfless when she's being controlled, but even if she was, Afton could take over and then just grab you instantly, so. In at 4, Custom Night. An idea brought to us by commenter Barbarian Goose. Quote, if anything, Steel Wool should add a custom night where you choose your guardian as like a little fan service with the main DLC. And I think that this could be a good idea. Not making the DLC revolve around that, but maybe making a small section where you play as another animatronic guardian. Or, but maybe they each get you out before the doors close at 12, or something similar so it wasn't the full game again, because if it is the full game, it's not a small section. Because if we're being honest, like having to do this again for the whole game would be an absolute nightmare, and they already released the main game unfinished. So I think that a small section of story without the open world thing would be a nice way for fans to understand what would happen to the story if the various characters were our guardians instead of Freddy. Or maybe even as like a nightmare segment or something. Like if you choose to leave the Pizzaplex at the end, instead of just getting killed by Vanny, we'd also have a nightmare about if one of the other animatronics was guarding us. Maybe an unplayable cutscene or a small playable section, just to make the fans who want this idea to happen happy. But again, it would increase the whole Gregory writing Foxy art just a little too much in my eyes. Getting close to the end, and at number 3, Phaser Blast Battle. While some people were saying that Freddy's boss battle would be at Bonnie Bowl, others suggested a battle at Phaser Blast. There, you happy I said it right for once, but I like saying Phaser, so leave me alone. Which does kind of make sense, since it's seemingly the only location aside from the Pizzaplex itself to really be connected to Freddy directly. And while you do have to go there for the story as well, I guess it's possible that they add a boss battle in here instead of playing the normal Phaser Blast game. Like, you know, like how they had it when like Chica was running through there, but instead this time it could be Freddy and we had to handle him. It wouldn't be as awesome of a fight as Freddy would really deserve, but it would kind of make sense given that it would really feel like the animatronics were trying to stop you. But it would really make one section of the game easier, just like if this battle was in Bonnie Bowl. Since we have to go here for the story, getting the Phaz camera would just be easier in the long run, since it doesn't end up in a boss battle. In my opinion though, the Phaser Blaster is better, so maybe it would be a way to balance the game easier. And number 2, character endings. I feel like the concept of additional endings was already obvious, but I did see multiple comments suggesting character-specific endings, which makes a lot of sense. I mean, in the end, there would still only be one canon ending, so maybe this kind of DLC wouldn't really do much harm. But with everyone reading into everything so much, I still think that this would cause more problems than it solves, like I said earlier. However, the character's specific endings, while not being the canon ending, could help provide more insight into the canon of the actual story. Like if Monty's ending revealed a bit about what happened to Bonnie, or if Roxy ends up breaking down emotionally or something. I don't know how she contributes to the main story. And I think that Chica's ending would just be her getting all the pizza of her dreams. And of course, having me by her side, the man of her dreams. I don't know why all of you are suddenly like so for Roxy, but Chica's my main girl, and I'm not letting anyone take that away. Not even you, narrator, alright? you guys can have the self-centered, egocentric Roxy, because that's not the Afton virus doing that. That's just the personality of the animatronic. So you can deal with someone who loves the mirror more than they love you, and I'll be with someone who loves pizza just as much as I do. It's called priorities, okay? And finally, in at number 1, Roxy's hair. Now, an overwhelming amount of comments were saying that Gregory could hide in Roxy's hair instead of chilling on her shoulders. But they didn't know how he would hide in Chica. So I figured it was a worthy number 1 spot. I mean, like, Roxy does have long hair, right? Well, yes, but the thing is, I see multiple issues with this that just make this idea seemingly impossible to me. Firstly, if Roxy's hair is meant to be like actual flowing hair and strands in universe, there would be nothing for Gregory to really hold on to unless he was holding onto her neck or something, which would be an interesting mechanic, since if you're around the other animatronics for too long, maybe they'd see Gregory's arms or feet poking out from behind you. But also, have you ever had hair in your face? Whether it's dog, a significant other, your own, having hair in your face is one of like the worst feelings ever, especially if it's unwanted. And Gregory wouldn't want that, assuming that he isn't simping for Roxy like all of you nasty motherfuckers are in the comments, okay? Y'all are simping harder than Will Smith. That's all if her hair was actual individual strands, but looking at the gameplay, it doesn't seem to be. It's multiple different seemingly plastic long triangles that end up making up her hair, and I doubt that you'd be able to climb inside that without cutting yourself up more than Afton in a spring-lock suit. So unless they just didn't want to simulate Roxy's hair physics, I don't think that this is possible. Unless you are all saying this because it's like a kink thing, which is unfortunately very possible. Well, as far as we can, since the Pizzaplex, or at least part of it, seemingly gets destroyed at the end of the true ending. So, when we choose to stay, is it possible for Burntrap to have more of an impact? Well, it's not as clear as you might think. See, Burntrap, at this moment, is sat in the Fnaf 6 pizzeria that's underneath the Pizzaplex, charging in his charging station. However, he only seems to come out of it when ourselves, along with Gregory, jump down into the final area. So, to make this DLC possible, well, we would have to have him wake up for some other reason. Now technically it's unknown if when we drop down Afton ironically wakes up at the same time or if we triggered it somehow, but given that it's FNAF, I'm guessing that us triggering it is more probable and more in line with what the series story was intended to be. So for this DLC to include him, Afton would need to wake up for some other reason, be it maybe a power surge or something that messed with his power supply or potentially gave him a boost that he needed to get out of the charger early. Now that Afton is out of his charger for whatever reason, assuming that that's where the story goes, what could the possible DLC stories be? Well, I'm guessing that Burntrap would somehow be able to get back into the Pizzaplex, despite Freddy telling Gregory that the elevator would only be good for one trip. But who knows, maybe that's because of Gregory and Freddy's weight combined or something like that. Maybe with just Afton in it, it would be able to make more than one trip, since after all it is how the animatronics were getting down to dig the tunnel in the first place, right? Anyways, Afton probably would get back up and then start roaming around the Pizzaplex, probably corrupting anything that he could. This would probably lead to another ending where we would either defeat Burntrap in the Pizzaplex or then maybe have to lure him back down into the basement. But in my eyes, in my mind, I think that we should have to lure him down to the parts and service room. Mostly because Vanessa told us to come to the main stage once we got into the elevator when trying to escape after you get Roxy's eyes. But if you listen to Vanessa, then go check the stage. There's nothing there for you. It just seems to be a time waster so that Moondrop has a better chance of getting you. But in my eyes, this seems like more of a game mechanic thing than an in-game thing. Like in the game universe, all he would need to do to catch you is just make it to you instead of waiting until it's exactly 1 hour. So there would have to be some reason that she called you there in the first place, right? Well, maybe it's because that's where Burntrap was, and now we gotta bring him down to parts and service to dismantle him and end his spree for good. Maybe we can get some main antagonist action where the animatronics roaming the Pizzaplex are instead replaced with the main villains of Burntrap and Vanny. Kind of like Nightmare Fredbear, Nightmare, or Nightmarion style, since those characters also replaced all of the villains in FNAF 4 when they were out. This would definitely make Vanny and Burntrap seem more powerful and important than the other animatronics. As especially if this only happened once we destroyed all 3. Since then, we would assume that they were kind of tossed aside or forgotten since they didn't really work anymore. And I think that this would also help Springtrap be more menacing, because honestly, looking at him, this is the scariest design for Afton yet. This is the most terrifying version of Springtrap that we have ever had, and we don't actually have to or get to interact with him directly. We don't have a reason to really be scared of him. He doesn't chase us, he doesn't have any real power over us, we burn him from a distance through monitors while pressing buttons, and he only tries to take control over Freddy instead of coming after us, which is what helped us think of this character as a waste. But having him chase us around the Pizzaplex would be an excellent way of making him more unique and terrifying, especially if periodically he would cause us to be forced out of Freddy while trying to take him over, and the only way that we could save Freddy would be maybe to press another button at a save station, or maybe try to activate a save station or something like that, something that could possibly jam Afton's frequency or signal or something along those lines. Making Afton a bigger villain would definitely be a better way to go in my eyes, because this man was underused and really kind of wasted in this way, especially if they do decide to kill him off permanently, since now he's just sentient code after having his soul burnt out of FNAF 6's fire. But having him chase us around the Pizzaplex and making the Freddy mech useless at times and really just being a horrifying antagonist would really help sell how terrifying this version was intended to be, and something I feel should have been in the base game, since, you know, he's the most iconic character in the entirety of the FNAF series, you know, purple guy, the main killer, something that was teased in the very first trailer and then yet maybe had 5 minutes of screen time, unless you're bad at the game like I am, and then in that case he had like 30 minutes to an hour of screen time. And don't even get me started on how horrible his death was, if that was even a death. Killing this man off screen is probably the rudest thing I think Scott could do to me. Like, I want to see this man, and this man being William, die. I want to be the one who causes it. I want to see the light leave his eyes. I want to see that last bit of code float into the air with his demonic purple eyes and then dissipate. Okay, I want to watch him suffer. It's the least that he deserves. Plus, with Springtrap and Vanny roaming the Pizzaplex, maybe we could actually figure out what happened to those other missing kids that potentially drew us to the Pizzaplex to begin with. I mean, Vanny says in the first trailer that they're supposed to be our friends, right? Like, I don't know, maybe she got to Gregory's orphanage, or like kind of like raided it with a bunch of animatronics. Man, like a World of Warcraft raid, but with animatronics. I don't know. Like, maybe this is the way that Vanny's room above Phaser Blast would be open for closer inspection without the Phaser Blast ending button. Maybe there's an additional secret room or duffel bag or like a present with some story lore that points to what really happened to those kids, and then we can actually go and try and figure it out. If they were killed maybe, or kidnapped, or used to fuel Afton. I mean, this could be a really good way for the story to really establish itself, since, you know, the game was released unfinished despite being a couple years late. Maybe something like this was always intended, but since there were so many delays, we had to deal with an underused and hardly terrifying antagonist despite the ability to make him so much more. But then again, maybe I'm just enthusiastic and expecting too much from these games, which may or may not be a bad thing. There we have it, friends. Will we see Springtrap in the FNAF Security Breach DLC? I honestly think that it's possible, and it would make much more sense than any other character we've talked about. And I hope that we get more with this character, because he's the first version of Afton that actually scares me. Firstly, based off of what we're expressly told in-game, it could actually be possible. All we really know is that Bonnie ended up going into Monty Golf around 4 AM, and then that was the last place he was seen. Quote from the duffel bag. Security report, 12:24 AM. Bonnie is seen leaving his green room in Rockstar Row heading east towards the atrium. 2:40 AM. Bonnie enters the East Arcade. 4:12 AM. Bonnie enters Monty Golf. That's the last of a repaired Bonnie that we ended up seeing, since in another bag we learned, quote, with Bonnie out of commission, we are making Monty the new bass player. Parts and service has already done the proper adjustments. This could be a good thing. Monty could be even more popular than Bonnie. Which, in combination to the fact that Bonnie was last seen in Monty Golf, suggests that Monty is the culprit behind Bonnie's destruction. Which is odd, in my opinion, because like we know Monty loves smashing things, so like that's not the weird part about this. My thought is, where was Monty chilling before he moved into Rockstar Row? Like, we don't see any real living quarters in Monty Golf, and the only other animatronics that we see outside of the core 4 is the daycare attendant, who has his own room above the ball pit. So, where could Monty have been staying if not in Rockstar Row? Anyway, if Monty is to blame for the destruction of Bonnie, we could see Bonnie come back in the DLC. But unfortunately, it wouldn't be really to get revenge on Monty, since we see that Monty does indeed face justice. At least, justice if he was guilty for the crimes. And if not, then it was just destruction. There is another theory, however, that could counter this point if it's true. The idea that Glamrock Bonnie's endo was used to create the new body that Afton inhabits in the true ending, Burn Trap. Now, we've covered this in another video, link to that is in the iCard, but in that video we came to the conclusion that the entire endo wasn't used, since the shoulders on Burn Trap aren't wide enough compared to the male Glamrock endos. And the fact that Afton's muscle fibers, or nerves, again, still not quite sure what they are still connected, would prove that it's the old suit. But there are sections where the fibers are blocked, like on the left foot and left arm. Both things that he was missing, or were more damaged at the time, while in his scrap trap form, seemingly suggesting that perhaps these specific parts came from Glamrock Bonnie instead of the whole endoskeleton. Maybe they were the only parts that they could use after Monty had his fun. Maybe they cut Monty off from destroying the rest of him, hence why he starts smashing his green room. We're not sure, and frankly the latter is just speculation, but it's still interesting. Originally, I was against the whole Glamrock Bonnie endoskeleton thing because, well, frankly, the body in the suit kind of disproved it for me. But I think I might have found a way to make it work. Like I said, looking at the model, I'm still not 100% sure. But if this was the Glamrock Bonnie endo, again, it would need to have broader shoulders, and actually it would need to be shorter. Unless they're like using the female endo for Bonnie, which wouldn't really make sense, so I don't think that they would, especially if they're going to give Bonnie shoulder pads. But I mean, like, even if we scale them so they're the same height, the endos, when posed the same way, and I'm comparing to like an actual endo, not the Glamrock Bonnie fan art, they still don't line up. And I mean, there are similarities between the two, of course, but there aren't enough where I can even call this above 50%. There are also issues of, again, the muscles being woven throughout the body. If it was just the head, I would understand, since they could have just put the old head on a new endo body, but with the muscles throughout the rest of the endo, that's too intricate to have been placed there. Even if they were, they would be dangling. They would just be hanging out, unless they had been stuck there like with super glue. Because like they were deep in there, because you know, he was shoved full of machine parts. So yeah, if Afton was going to transfer his head to a new endo, it wouldn't come with the rest of the body bits. So, yeah, I'm gonna go with they added the arm and the leg on after the fact. But what would that mean for Glamrock Bonnie? Well, it would mean that if decommissioning Bonnie was a part of Vanny's plan to resurrect Afton, there would really be no Bonnie available that you could bring back, since he would really just be decommissioned. And while the other animatronics do come back, losing a leg and an arm is worse than your legs, your eyes, or just being smashed, since he wouldn't really be able to hop around on one leg despite being a bunny, and since he only had one arm, he wouldn't really be able to crawl like Monty does. So, I mean, I suppose the DLC could instead just be replacing Monty with Glamrock Bonnie, but that's achievable with mods, so there isn't really a point to making that a paid DLC, since we would all just opt into modding the game for that experience. Plus, certainly the model they use for Bonnie wouldn't end up being the one added to the mod instead of the current one, so at this point we'd need a solid DLC to actually make it worth it. With that being said, however, Bonnie being decommissioned might actually impact his presence in the game, but not to the story, since the DLC could be, like I've suggested before in other videos, a series of missions that involve us investigating his disappearance, possibly as a favor to Freddy, since he really seemed to miss Bonnie. Like, he was pretty sad when he was saying that there's no bunny in this Pizzaplex, not anymore. That was my Freddy impression. Maybe it would even be because Freddy was already investigating it or something like that, saying that he knows Monty's been giving him side-eye and wanted to know if that Monty would be coming after Freddy next. Since after all, Monty is stronger than Freddy, at least until we break Monty's brains in with a giant bucket filled with balls, which is a total hazard, by the way. I mean, like, come on. The giant bucket that we used to crush Monty is such a issue for health and safety for both employees and for customers. Because, like, if a 6-year-old kid with a 4-year-old's body can use it to destroy an animatronic, how safe is it going to be for literally anyone else? Like, what's the point of the bucket anyway? Like, is it supposed to contain water? Because, like, when it falls on Monty, it breaks the catwalk that we're on. And honestly, water, especially in that quantity, is going to be a lot heavier than some ball pit balls filled with air. Seriously, who the living hell thought that this was going to be a good idea? Or like, how have they not gotten fined for it yet? Or like, how have they not fixed it if they have gotten fined? Yeah, there are guardrails on the catwalk, but that doesn't matter if there's a giant bucket that can destroy the catwalk that you're standing on and then cause you to fall to your death. Especially when falling that distance just like severed Monty's legs from his torso. Anyway, sorry, rant aside, maybe once Freddy has Monty's hands, we're able to investigate the rest of what happened to Bonnie. Maybe we get into Monty's green room and then kind of like suss out what went wrong. And no, that was not an Among Us joke, despite me constantly making Among Us jokes about this game because Gregory is sus, he vented. But like, maybe in the end, we would find Bonnie's casing with a missing arm and a missing leg, and then we would know for certain that I'm right. Now, do I think that this is going to happen? Really? I'm not sure. Like, a lot of people seemingly want to see Bonnie in this game, so much so that they are replacing Monty using mods. But also, the idea for the Choose Your Guardian DLC is also very popular, and perhaps even more popular than the others. However, since we know DLCs to be canon add-ons, I'm guessing that a Bonnie investigation would be more likely than switching up the robot who protects us, since honestly, the whole Bonnie thing has less lore implications in the long run. Having someone other than Freddy protect us just seems like it would be too messy, especially with the fact that we would have to steal the other bits from the animatronics, and if we pick Roxy, then we have her eyes the entire game, which is kind of cheating. But like, you know, you get it? You do understand what I mean here? Like, I like the idea, but it's probably just gonna have to be a mod instead of actual canon DLC, okay? I hate to say it, even though I say it every time I talk about this mod. In its end, Foxy's return. Foxy was also missing along with Bonnie this time around. However, with the inclusion of Roxy, who seems to be like the Sephora version of Foxy, we didn't really seem to miss them all that much, especially since Roxy also runs hella fast, basically just being a gender-swapped form of the lovable Fox. However, seeing Foxy make a triumphant return could be an interesting concept for a DLC. Maybe he was having a form of like lover's spat with Roxy, and then that's why she keeps telling herself that she's beautiful and the best, because Foxy broke her heart or something. I don't know. I don't think that they would do that just because of all the horrific fan art that it would generate. Like, yeah, of course there is already fan art about this, but having it confirmed as canon would make everyone go absolutely nuts. God, I'm actually shaking at the thought of that. That sounds like a horrible idea. Anyway, lots of fans have already modded or put Foxy into the game some way or another, so clearly it's an in-demand idea. And honestly, if we did something like the whole missing animatronics showed up for a full-on battle royale with the new ones, I think that would be epic as hell. Freddy Mech for the win. In at 9, Arcade Conspiracy. That's right, I'm talking about this again. The Arcade Conspiracy gets its name from one of the lore duffel bags that we can find, where we learn that something else seems to be going on here. I'm gonna keep making that joke every single time. Quote from the Arcade Conspiracy note. Exit interview. They are working together, the arcades. They're hiding something. The glitches. Glitch them all at the same time. Then the princess will recognize me. She's testing me. I am not yet worthy. The others are protecting it. Let me stay. I am so close. Just one more night. Please. I can save the princess. Now, it's clear that this seems to be referring to the Princess Quest games. However, it doesn't seem like we have to glitch out those arcade cabinets in order to get their ending. We just have to beat them in order from 1 to 3, and then boom, we save Vanny. So what could this really mean? Well, there are 3 other arcade machines that seem to be having mysterious glitches, or there's something wrong with them as well. The Balloon Boy World game that you can find in the secret room in the theater, Chica's Feeding Frenzy, which won't turn off even when unplugged, that you're supposed to be able to find in the bakery, and the Monty Golf A arcade game that is, according to its duffel bag, shouldn't be in the mini golf area but somehow is. However, while you can play both Balloon Boy World and the Monty Golf game, Chica's Feeding Frenzy isn't actually playable. You can only access it using a mod menu that lets you cheat it in from the main menu. So adding in this arcade cabinet could mean that there's something bigger going on here than a simple DLC, which honestly I would love. And currently my my high score is still 14 for Monty Golf, where the lowest score is 13, so still feel pretty good about that. And it ain't VR. I don't care how many of you are against it, I am actively hoping that, like how Help Wanted got a flat screen version, that Security Breach will get a VR version, or port, or whatever you want to call it. Is it likely? No. Do I want it? Yes. This game was pretty fun normally, okay? But in VR, I think that this would be one of the most intense and exhilarating VR games that I've played. Aside from Blade and Sorcery, but that's just because it awoke something within me. Some of the cutscenes would need to be modified, probably by giving us a third-person perspective instead of the normal first-person. But other than that, I think it would be incredible. Like, imagine playing Phaser Blast in VR against Mommy Chica. Bro, all the Vanny simps would let themselves get killed. And then I could have some fun walking around as Freddy, pretending to be invincible and punching animatronics. I really want this, okay? It may be complicated to do, but I'm willing to wait, damn it. But exploring the Pizzaplex in VR is kind of goals. I know that there are like VR chat and rec room maps that let you do this, but they're not the real deal, man. Combine this with some of the other ideas on this list, and oh boy, would it be an amazing experience. Whoa, doggies. I know that they said they wouldn't do it, okay, but Scott says a lot of stuff that he doesn't mean, so. And at 7, Secure and Neutralize. Now, the Secure and Neutralize concept comes from Knitter user The Silver Sea, and how they describe it is basically a pacifist route, where instead of playing through the story and destroying the other animatronics, you'd instead be able to befriend them and remove them from the game, basically. At certain points in the animatronic boss fights, you'd be able to choose whether or not you commit to the destruction of the animatronic, and if you choose not to, the pacifist route would start. After choosing not to kill, you'd strategize about how to take the animatronic down, which would already be determined in the story, but like for story purposes you'd have to figure it out. Maybe Freddy would offer a suggestion. Then you'd remove the CPU that Afton is using to control the animatronic out of their back, and the animatronic would reboot. After rebooting, they'd have no memory of what happened, and then you'd be able to lead them back to Rockstar Row and put them in their changing station or green room for the rest of the game. This concept is actually pretty interesting, and if you want to read more about it and get more in detail that I can't actually get into in this video because it's a top 10, the link for this will be in the description if I can remember. If not, yell at me in the comments. And at 6, Daycare Redo. The Daycare Redo DLC concept comes to us from Fnaf wiki user Glitched Morals, saying that they came up with a side quest with benefits called the Daycare Redo. Quote from the post, here's how it works. Instead of being pushed out of the slide when attempting to go back into the daycare after being banned, there is an option to talk to the son. Gregory can apologize for breaking the rules and ask if there is anything that he can do to make it up to him. Son will send Gregory on a few missions to do certain things, like bring back a certain item to him or clean up the play structures that he knocked down. They will need access to a cleaning or janitor pass, which can be obtained from a present box. And if Gregory does all of these missions, he will have Son's trust back, which will result in a few benefits. He will have full access to the daycare again, which will have extra secrets and collectibles to actually have the full access be worth it. Play structures are now new hiding spots for hiding from animatronics. You'll have access to a new room that is the daycare storage room. In that room is extra structures and toys that are found in the daycare. Presents and duffel bags will also be in this room. Son will give Gregory a daycare night pass, which will result in the moon no longer chasing Gregory anymore, even when the lights are off. And Son can be interactable, and with him, Gregory can watch different movies in the Fast Theater, play hide and seek, and other mini games. Honestly, this seems like a pretty solid idea, and actually a pretty interesting one, so good job, Glitched Morals. The link to this post will also be in the description. if I can remember. Halfway through into number 5, multiplayer. Now, with a working pizzaplex, there comes the idea that doing this with friends would be an amazing time. And honestly, this is one of the things we've been wanting for ages. When a multiplayer FNAF didn't really make sense before, a working pizzaplex would make the most sense. Being able to explore the pizzaplex during the day with friends and even random people online would be awesome. And honestly, if this isn't in a FNAF DLC, I'm sure someone's going to make this happen in VR chat or Rec Room or something like that. I mean, like, there's already a mod, but that's where you play as animatronics, and I just want a whole load of kids running around the pizzaplex, you know, being able to play all the games. However, if this was in the real FNAF game, I think it would be the most beneficial. However, VR chat is a free game that you don't need VR to play, despite what the name would suggest, so it would be better for fans unless this came out as like a free DLC of some sort. Which honestly, considering how the game was released unfinished, a lot, a DLC that fixed things and then actually gives us multiplayer would actually be nice if it was free, especially if it's just fixing issues, okay? Anyway, a multiplayer pizzaplex would be perfect. In it for daytime mode. Being able to explore the pizzaplex during the day is something that I think we can all agree we'd love to see. Being able to actually play these games without the ominous threat of death would be a great addition to this game. I want to play laser tag without having to worry about Chica chasing me, okay? Unless she's chasing me in a romantic way because someone wanting me that bad is kind of goals. But for real, the ability to just mess around the pizzaplex during the day would certainly be fun. No restrictions, just full passes or whatever. Or maybe we have to earn tickets to pay for the passes by playing the various arcade games. I think that would be pretty damn cool. Combine this with the multiplayer mode and this would be crazy. Although I guess multiplayer mode would kind of imply that it's during the day since the story doesn't really allow for multiplayer. So let's just assume the daytime mode would just be you on your own. The single player daytime experience, which sounds like a really bad sitcom. Like not one that's so bad it's good, but just like a bad sitcom. Mostly because of the name. Getting close to the end, into number 3, Burn Trap. With everything that was left up in the air about Burn Trap's ending, us being unsure whether he's actually dead or if the blob decided to save him, getting to see more of Burn Trap or even more of Burn Trap's story, maybe some explanations as to what happened in between the games, or maybe even some potential backstory to the character of William Afton, would surely be greatly appreciated by the community. If there's anything that I've learned by talking about this series every day for a year, the community doesn't like talking about any theory that isn't what they've already believed to be true, and they'll consider these theories canon and proven despite them not actually being confirmed. So, literally anything getting confirmed about this character would be a win in my eyes, especially if we finally get to see William officially die on screen. You have no idea how much I would love to watch William finally kick that sweet, sweet bucket on screen. Better than any orange YouTube video ever. But ultimately, into number 2, Inspector Gregory. Bonnie was missing from Security Breach, having been destroyed most likely by Monty, but perhaps getting to investigate Bonnie's disappearance and being able to change how things go with the Security Breach lineup would certainly be an interesting mission. If we were meant to like truly investigate this, turning the DLC into a bit of a detective game, I think that would be a really compelling and fun storyline. And from what I've seen, we all want justice for Bonnie, especially since we want Papa Freddy to be reunited with Bonnie since he seemingly really misses him. Considering the dialogue from the first recharge station at least, when Gregory asks about Vanny, and Freddy says, "There is no bunny in this pizzaplex, not anymore," in a very somber way. Plus, I mean, I've seen enough animatronic alligator thirst traps on TikTok that I kind of want Monty gone. Yes, it was only the one thirst trap, but it was for Monty, okay? It's rough, man. Well, okay, there was only one for the actual animatronic. There was more for like cosplays of the animatronic, but like, dear God. And finally, into number 1, Choose Your Guardian. I'm pretty sure you all wanted this, and I'm pretty sure it's the thumbnail for this video. Currently, the Choose Your Guardian concept is the most popular idea for a Security Breach DLC. Well, at least from ideas that came from fans. The idea behind this was that you'd play through the story again, but this time you'd choose which animatronic would come to defend you instead of Glamrock Freddy. The post on Reddit by user Space Bear suggested Chica and Roxy, with Roxy carrying you instead of hiding inside her stomach. However, unfortunately, I don't think that this idea is very likely. Despite jokes in the Help Wanted DLC that the DLC was not a canon addition to the game and it had no hidden intent or purpose, this was not the case. Then we know that the DLC is canon and had hidden intended purpose. However, this DLC, the Choose Your Guardian DLC, would cause too much chaos to the story to actually work well. It would just make too many things confusing, and there is no way that they would make a non-canon DLC in my mind. But I do like this idea, and I think that it should be a mod. We can probably make it work in some way, I'm certain of it. Like, you'd need the voice lines, but I'm pretty sure there are some fans that would be able to recreate the voice for the mod. Getting the actual voice actors would probably be a little too expensive for a mod, but yeah, unfortunately I don't think this is very likely, but hey, maybe it's a good mod. Firstly, let's go over a theory that I've been seeing that I wanted to stop in its tracks. I mean, it's probably not gonna happen, because this video is probably gonna get like 6,000 views max, but either way, the identity of this little girl is 100% not Susie, the girl who goes on to possess Chica. Susie has been dead for a long time once the game takes place, being dead for over 50 years or so. So there is literally no possible way that this girl could be Susie. You may be thinking that she could be possessed by Susie, but we released her spirit in the Happiest Day minigame, and she has only possessed Chica as far as we've known. Some assume that the Happiest Day minigame takes place at the end of the timeline, however I don't think that that's true. Considering how FNAF 3 was supposed to be the end, and that when FNAF 3 is over we get the good ending, to me that indicates that the Happiest Day minigame takes place in FNAF 3, especially considering how the simulated pizzeria FNAF 6 does not have to lure the original animatronics back to the pizzeria, meaning that they did not need to be released because, well, they had already been dealt with. So about this girl, let's go over some evidence about what we see on the poster. Firstly, there is her blonde hair. We know that it's blonde thanks to the rim lighting on the character being blonde at her hair, and while yes it may seem stupid, I think that the general consensus is that this girl is blonde. While rim lighting is the color of the light that it is instead of the color of the person, it also isn't going to be yellow on a darker surface, so this means that her hair is not black, eliminating Cassidy from the race. So this is not the spirit that was possessing Golden Freddy, or who a good amount of people consider the one you should not have killed, aka the Vengeful Spirit from Ultimate Custom Night. The girl in the middle is also wearing a jacket and what appears to be a denim skirt, fingerless gloves, white socks, and sneakers that light up Skechers style. Hashtag not sponsored, but like Skechers, hit me up, we can probably work something out. Now this may not be out of the ordinary to any of you, but this instantly reminded me of someone from a previous game. As I did mention this in another video, Elizabeth Afton. Okay, I get that she's been dead for longer than Susie, but just hear me out, okay? See, when we were playing Sister Location, we ended up getting the cutscene where Elizabeth is grabbed and killed by Baby, turning Baby's eye color from blue to green. This outfit that this mysterious girl is wearing is nearly identical to the one that Elizabeth was wearing in that minigame, aside from the light up shoes that wouldn't be available for another decade by real world standards. However, in FNAF in 1983, they also had discs that emitted sounds that altered the appearance of things in your brain. So a couple of light up shoes 10 years early doesn't really seem like that much of a stretch. The skirt is also identical to the skirt that Elizabeth wears in that cutscene, and the jacket could easily be covering up a similar styled shirt, which could be pushing the idea that Gregory having two stripes on his shirt is definitely important. But I want to talk about the color. You see, there is no real color on this girl. Bumping up the saturation, brightness, or vibrance actually shows that this girl is drawn in black and white. Have you ever heard of the saying, lack of evidence is sometimes itself evidence? Like maybe you're dealing with a professional killer, or that these thieves are overly cautious. Well, I think that this is a similar situation. Think about it. Why would they draw this girl in black and white? I mean, yeah, sure, she's backlit, but being backlit doesn't make you grayscale. This is an indication that the color of this girl's clothing can possibly mean something. Maybe Scott thought that he was too subtle with Gregory, only putting two stripes on his shirt, so this time he went for the full outfit including color. Speaking of color, there's also the matter of her shoes, the only part of her that isn't rimlit that has color. The color of her lights being purple and red. Purple obviously being a nod to William Afton, aka the Purple Guy, a character so synonymous with purple that I can't wear my favorite shirt on this channel now without being called a serial killer. And red, while misleading, actually does tie back to Elizabeth Afton in the form of Baby. Her entire outfit was red, including her bright red hair, and I mean, like, it seems fairly reasonable to assume that this girl has at least a connection to the Afton family, although there is another explanation for the red on her shoes. Give me a minute. Given that the other two humans on this screen, Vanny and Gregory, are also connected to the Aftons, we can guess that this is the case with the blonde girl as well. However, I don't think that the girl herself is Elizabeth. Here's the wow moment, alright? I think that this girl is possessed by Elizabeth. Yeah, I know, right? Hear me out. I know I said that that's not possible with Susie, but that's because we freed her, alright? There are 7 faces on the Blob, the secret antagonist of Security Breach. 4 of them have lit red eyes, and 2 of them don't. The 4 that do are Naked Endo, Fnaf 1 Bonnie, Fnaf 1 Chica, and Mangle, all of which are somehow present in some form or another in the Pizzaplex. Mangle is Roxy, Bonnie was Bonnie, Chica was Chica, and we fight multiple endos on multiple occasions. The 2 that aren't present, however, don't have their eyes lit up, Baby and the Puppet. But we know that fire doesn't do anything to Remnant, clearly. I mean, Afton has burned, what, 3 times now, and none have stuck? And in another video, we determined that the spirits can only be freed when they get their unfinished business resolved, like the missing children in Happiest Day. Baby also doesn't seem too happy about burning in FNAF 6. She in fact says that she wants to make her daddy proud, and dying to fire would really do the opposite considering how many he's survived. So, much like we suspect Michael could have, Elizabeth could have swapped bodies as well, into one of the missing children that Vanny took. Hell, that could have been why Vanny took them in the first place. Afton wanted his daughter to have a vessel, hence why this one looks so much like Elizabeth's original body. This also explains why there is red on her shoes, because it's meant to represent the glowing red eyes that would be in the animatronic head. Remember, it's damn hard to kill an Afton for good, and in the books, Baby is really the one orchestrating everything, at least when it comes to the Afton amalgamation. Especially since this girl is facing away, her eyes could also be green. And I have a feeling that throughout the game we will see her eyes either flip-flop or start off blue and become green or something like that. Or, what I think would be the coolest way to do this would be having her eyes green normally, like if we see it in like a camera or something, but be blue in a mirror. So, here's how I think the story went. After the FNAF 6 fire, William gets a hold of Vanny in order to get his body back. He creates, through the company, a new location on top of the old one to hide his deeds, and then he sets himself free. In the process, though, he notices that his daughter's spirit is also stuck. Since this is the first time they've been together since he put her in the basement of sister location, he decides to help her out, and causes Vanny to start abducting kids who look like his in an effort to rebuild his former family. Given that his youngest son is either still possessing him or now loose to the elements as well, the blonde girl is then kidnapped and Elizabeth finds her suitable host, so she's possessed. And now she follows Vanessa around in an effort to keep an eye on her and remind her that Afton is always watching. She starts manipulating her through encoded chats and messages, and hacks the FNAF AR animatronics to cause them to malfunction, and gets Vanessa promoted to security guard to keep an even closer eye on her. As a part of her observations, she starts therapy just like Vanessa does, and despite her telling the truth about her family history, it doesn't line up with the girl that she's possessed. Hence the one therapist calling out Client 46 for it, and her explanation about what happened to her family seeming to lack emotion, since after all she watched it happen as Baby instead of experiencing it as an actual child. After the collapse, she is either brought back by Afton requesting help with himself, or possibly also to help secure the vessel for Crying Child, who escaped along with a Michael possessed Glamrock Freddy. To me, this seems like a game about reuniting. Reuniting with lost brothers, lost hope, but most of all, reuniting a family. The Afton family. After all, we have all the characters now. The misguided father whose misdeeds cost him everything, his loyal daughter who wants to see her family back, the mother who now agrees and is a part of the father's plan, even if unwillingly so, and the sons, one too scared to do anything, and the older brother who helps him beat the circle that their father created, who rights their wrongs and makes up for their family's sins. What do you think? I feel like I'm pretty spot on with this one, and that this could be a great launching point for the next part of the series, but let me know what you think down below.